everyone, it's Mike from Iron Beak Forge, and today we're going to be making some S Damascus low layer mosaic. We're going to start by doing a normal stack, right? So we're going to forge that down into a square, and then we're going to flip it on its side as though we're making W's, but we're not going to make W's. Instead of forging it straight down like we're making W's, we're going to turn it on the bias. We're not going to go 45, we're going to go 35 degrees roughly. We're going to forge at 35 degrees so that we offset when we crush down to make what normally would be W's, and it's going to squiggle like an S, ideally. Once we have it offset, we're going to crush it down, and we're going to cut it into at least 6 pieces. We'll restack that, forge weld it up, and we'll move on. The next step, we're going to cut that in half. We're going to restack it again so that we have somewhere between 12 and 18 stacks in one loaf. We'll forge that loaf to reduce by at least a third, probably closer to half. Then we'll have our final loaf from which we'll cut our billet of steel. From there, we're either going to cut out or forge our knife billet, and we're going to proceed to make a knife. You're going to follow me from start to finish. Right now, though, follow me over to my bench, and I'm going to explain our stack today. All right, so what we're going to be making today is kind of an ombre pattern. We're going to start really heavy on the dark. We've got 4 pieces of 1080, and then we're going to rock into 4 pieces of half the thickness, 15 and 20. And then the next stack, 3 and 3 and 2 and 2 till we get to 1 and 1. And then we're going to start over, and we're going to go back towards the heavy. Now, once we form that into the wave pattern, it should look pretty cool when we roll it out into our knife pattern. We should have big, bold lines in the steel. And I love that because you can see it across the room. That's what I love about low layer Damascus, is you don't need to be up close to see what it is. Some of those high layers, you really got to be within a foot, and you're like, oh, that's beautiful. With low layer Mosaic Damascus especially, you can see it from across the room and know exactly what I'm looking at. And that's why I love to make this steel. So we're starting with a thick stack of 1080. We've got 4 pieces here, and then we're going to move into 4 pieces of half thickness, 15 and 20, and then we're going to go 3 and 3 and 2 and 2 and 1 and 1, and then we're going to go all the way back until we're back at 4 pieces to bookend the pattern. That should look really cool when we're done. It should be a big, bright, bold pattern when we lay it out on the side of a blade. We're going to get it welded up. We're going to throw a stick on it so I can handle it easily. I know a lot of people use a nub. I like a stick. It keeps me far enough away from this incredibly hot house-made forge, and keeps my hands nice and safe. All right, as some of you may know, 3M is a sponsor of this channel, and they were kind enough to send us out not just a grinder, but also an abrasives package. And I've been assured by the head of the abrasives department that this Cubitron 3, which is their newest abrasive, it's got a structured abrasive, little pyramid structured grains. It's fantastic in the 2x72 belts. We're going to try it today in the Cubitron 3 grinding disc to clean up these welds before we throw it in the forge. Cool thing about this grinder is it's 19 amps compared to 4 or 5 amps usually from the competing brands. So it's a very, very strong grinder. I've had some limited experience with it, but I haven't used this abrasive yet, so we're going to try it out and give it a go. I've got some old wrist injuries from back in the day when I was military and law enforcement, and so it's hard for me to wear gloves and get my hands around this thing and be able to hold on to it. So I'm going to not wear gloves, but I definitely recommend that you wear gloves, an apron, and a face shield if you got it. That cleaned up super fast. Loving the new abrasive. Big shout out, thank you 3M for sending those. We'll be using them all over the shop, I know it. Now we're gonna weld the stick on, and we're gonna get this thing fired up in the forge so we can start squishing it. All right, that's ready to throw in the forge. Sometimes we go fluxless. We're not doing that today. Sometimes when I do end grain patterns, I like to have the flux just to make sure that it is oxygen free inside the billet. It also allows me to go a little hotter in the forge. So let's get this thing in the forge and get it heating up. The cleaner it is, the more safe you are without flux, but I didn't feel like doing that. We're ready for some flux. Guys, I like to flux inside the forge just because then we don't expose it to oxygen, which is the entire point of fluxing, just keep the oxygen off of it. And I also use entirely too much flux, I've been told. But this is the way I do it. You feel free to do it your way. All right guys, we've got our initial stack of Damascus forged down into roughly a square. Now it's time to go ahead and knock the corners in on one side, and then we're going to turn it on a bias on that same direction, and we're going to just forge it on the bias, probably like 35 degrees, between 25 and 35 degrees. And that's going to create an offset for us that we're not creating W's. We want to be creating S's. From there, we're going to squish it down and not re-square it, but we're going to re-rectangle it. And so we get a nice squished rectangle that's offset in one direction, almost like a trapezoid. All right, so we've redimensionalized our steel down towards a rectangle. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna just continue to kind of like firm that up, make it nice and even. We're gonna then go over to the rolling mill after I hit it with the spacers here, and we're gonna roll it so that it's nice and smooth for when I wanna hit it with the grinder, because I want that to be as flat as possible for when we restack. So we'll just even it out on the rolling mill. If you don't have a rolling mill, and I know most people don't, then you can just do that as much as you can on the press, or if you're doing with an anvil, God bless you, a planishing hammer. You know, I don't do all that with the planishing hammer, but I'm broken, so we use tools. So what we just did is we finished dimensionalizing it into basically a rectangle so that we can restack it. We finished putting it at the 2-inch spacer here so that I can grind it easily if I need to go to a belt surface grinder, because the belt is 2 inches wide. So now we have a 2-inch wide piece of steel that is also should be very close to perfectly flat because we rolled it perfectly flat. So it's all the same size. And then we straightened it to make sure it was actually like straight. Now it's cooling, we'll cut the ends off of it. Once we cut the ends off of it, we'll etch it to see if we achieved our pattern. This is a pattern I've been trying for a while, and I've never quite hit it exactly how I want. We may not hit it exactly how we want today. No matter what we do, it'll be different than anything we've ever done, and that'll be cool. Now that we're getting cooled down, we're gonna take this ombre, hopefully ombre S pattern. We're gonna cut the stick off. Probably we're gonna cut about 1 inch down, because obviously the ends are always pretty ragged. We're gonna etch it up, see what we got, and then we're gonna put it in the vise. We're gonna grind off all of the forge scale with the 3M grinder that Taylor Tools sent us to test. Thank you, Taylor Tools, along with the 3M abrasives package that they sent. Same one that we used to grind our welds earlier. So we'll see how that goes, and then we'll probably clean it up just perfectly clean and flat on the surface grinder using the new 3M Cubitron 3 that 3M did send. And then when it's perfectly flat, we'll cut it up, weld it back together in a stack, and get to forge welding again. We're gonna run this 60 grit Cubitron 3. This is the 1184F from 3M, and it's a fantastic abrasive. It's using a structured abrasive that's pyramid in shape. So one of the benefits of this belt that I've noticed in my knife making is I don't get deep scratches like I would with a crushed abrasive from some of the other companies. The technology is fantastic. They last a long time. They're great for pretty much any kind of grinding activity, and they can handle high pressure. All right, let's go find out. Moment of truth. We're gonna dip this in the ferric, see how it etches up, and see what we got. So you can see here on this pattern, we didn't get perfect S's, but we also don't have W's. So we're gonna try and get this offset when we stack it to the point where it won't look contiguous. And then hopefully we'll just end up with some kind of wave patterns. We're also gonna be able to mess with this a little bit in the restack. We can kind of like canter it a little bit so that when we make the knife billet, it looks more offset than it will if we just stack it. So we can still do more offsetting with the forging, but it is not perfect as to what we had wanted. What we do see though is we do see thick and thinner lines coming from the outside in. So outside thick, inside thin, back to outside thick. So in that regard, we were successful. So this end doesn't look like exactly what I wanted. Let's etch the other side and see how it does. Well, that's actually much better. That's closer to what we were hoping for. So obviously when we cut into this, it looks pretty close to what we want on this angle. On the other side, it doesn't look as close to what we want. So I'm hoping that as we move down into the cuts, it's more like this and less like that. What could be happening on either side, and I don't know which, is we could have cut a little bit deeper and we're revealing more of the true pattern. Like I said, the ends sometimes are a little bit wonky, and so sometimes you gotta cut a little bit deeper. And we'll know as soon as we crack it open. But for now, let's get grinding. Let's get all this forge scale off. Let's make sure it's perfectly flat and ready to restack. And then I'll grind each edge, we'll etch each edge, and then that'll help me know how to restack it for the next stack of welds. This is always the test of whether I forged well or not. If it fits in the vise without teetering, it's even. All right, we've got this thing chucked up in the vise, and we're gonna start grinding on it. To do that, we're gonna be using the Cubitron 3, 1182, come in a pack. They're fantastic. Come with a hard backing. Works really well. Everything that we're using here is available on taytools.com. Thank you, Taylor Tools, for providing it. We're gonna give our honest feedback. These were provided to us for free, but there was no strings attached. So we're gonna give them an honest review, but we do appreciate our sponsors sending us stuff out. We're gonna start with this and test these grinding discs out, and then to make sure that we're nice and flat and clean, we're gonna transition over to the 2x72, throw it on the surface grinder, and use the new Cubitron 3 and 36 grit to make it perfectly flat. Let's get grinding. We finished up grinding, and you can see that this is still cool enough to put my hand on, which is not always the case when I'm using like a grinding cup wheel. These abrasives are fantastic. They made it through this forge scale, no problem. We did go through about a disc and a half, but these are quite a bit cheaper than a 2x72 belt, so it's okay that we went through a couple of them to get through that forge scale. We're gonna save our belts from the forge scale. Another way you can do that, if you don't have enough money for abrasives or you're just trying to do it on a budget, is you can get a barrel full of muriatic acid, soak for 3 or 4 hours if you have the time to do that, and a lot of that forge scale will come off, and then you can grind it clean on the grinder. All right, we're done with the hand grinding for now. We're gonna move over to the surface grinding attachment. To accomplish this task, we're gonna run the new Cubitron 3 1184F with the YF backing. This is a 36 grit belt, and Cubitron uses a structured abrasive, meaning that they're a pyramid structure, and they're all shaped the same size. And one of the differences between that and a crushed abrasive is crushed abrasives will be different sizes within a certain mesh. And so that's why sometimes you get random deep scratches that you have to then go back and buff out. That's not gonna happen with this. It doesn't matter a whole ton because we're gonna restack this, but when we go into the part where we're cutting our blade, we're gonna start with either a 36 or a 60 grit, and that structured abrasive is gonna come in clutch for us. Again, these will be available at taytools.com. Check them out, links in the bio. All right guys, you can see on this first pass that I can still hold this when it came off the grinder. This is just throwing metal off the steel bar. It's fantastic. You can also see that we're pretty well cleaned up, except for right here at the ends. We got a couple little deep pieces of forge scale that went in there. Not a big deal. We're gonna put those on the outside as long as the other side's not worse. So first we're gonna flip it over after we cool it off. We'll grind the other side, see how it is, and then we'll start cutting it into chunks to restack. So we're gonna flip this around just in case we're about 1,000th off on either side. These are never perfect because they're not rigid. So we're gonna flip it around, grind the rest off, and go from there. But what you saw me do a minute ago with this little thing here, this is a belt dressing tool. That's actually a grinding stone dressing tool. You can get them for a couple bucks on many sites. If you take a structured abrasive belt and you just touch this very gently, it'll refracture. Same for most ceramic belts. And you can just, if it starts to glaze over, and I could tell this was just starting to glaze over a little bit, but we just touched it up and it immediately started cutting like new again. So a lot of life left in this belt. We probably could do this 10, 15 times with these belts and be just fine. They are that good. Okay guys, that's it. We really just needed that one more pass. I gave it 2 or 3 just to make sure, but this side is as clean as it's gonna get. There's no D-lams, our welds are great. They look perfectly contiguous. So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna measure it, we're gonna cut it up, and we're gonna get it ready for restack. We're gonna etch all of the ends and we're gonna match them up how we want them in the pattern, and then we're gonna restack it. Perfect. 6 pieces. The moment of truth time. We're cracking open this billet and we're gonna see what all the internal looks like for the restack. Hopefully they look like that one side and not like the side that's too close together, because if they all look close to the one side, we're gonna end up with a fantastic, fantastic billet. Exactly what I wanted for this knife. That's a very common part of the process. We've got these cut up and it's finally time to go ahead and grind the ends so we can get the saw kerf off, and then we're gonna etch them up and see what we're looking at so that we can restack them. And I'm either gonna be really happy or slightly disappointed. We'll see what happens. We're gonna be happy either way, because no matter what, it's a piece of art. I love to make art. I feel privileged to make art. And so whether it turns out exactly as I hoped or not, there's something about making it and it turning out how it turns out that maybe it was just supposed to be that way in the world. The next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna take this stack over, now that we've got the ends ground, I'm gonna etch it in acid. I'm gonna etch each one individually in acid, and then we're gonna put them together and see how they look. We're excited. It's not as bad as I thought it was. It may not be perfect, but it's not as bad as I was worried about. We got 1 or 2 that I think are gonna be off, but that's okay. We'll put those towards an end. We'll see. Last one. All right. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for tuning in. Another shout out to our sponsors at TaylorTools.com. Thank you, Mike Taylor. Also to 3M and to Production Strategies for providing the production crew and the filming and all the things. Couldn't do it without you. You're appreciated. Thanks for sponsoring. To everyone that's tuning in, thank you so much for being here. Look forward to more content in the future and tell me what you want in the comments. We're happy to do it.